to restore Pokemon, TCG, and sports cards here on the Cardboard Alchemist podcast. And now here are your hosts, Giovanni and Sebastian.
Welcome to Cardboard Alchemist. We have a very special episode today. We've got Jack, who's a previous grader with PSA, and we're going to be asking some really cool questions. I've spoke to Jack in the past and made a reel a while ago that got a lot of hits, actually, and people were like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this and all that. So we're going to talk about some of those tips that I learned from Jack in the past, and then we're also going to come up with some new questions here that Sebastian and I have been mulling around with as we've been diving into the deep, dark, murky waters of card restoration / grading.
So we're going to debunk a lot of stuff there's been a lot of questions going on with allegedlys and, so we're going to debunk all that here.
Yes, as a precursor, this is for entertainment purposes only, and nothing we say is 100%. And yeah,
we're just asking the questions.
Blanket statement right there. Yeah. So, Jack, how you doing, man?
Doing good. It's great to talk to you guys again, and excited to kind of just dive into all this fun stuff.
Heck yeah. So let's just kick it off. Let's just jump right into it. So, dude, I was just at a card show last week. And in fact, I had 2 back-to-back card shows. And, I was vending at both. But on the last day is the day you run around and try to get those deals. And it's just funny, PSA. I had not even joking, a 7-year-old girl walk up to my table, whatever, super young, and she's like, do you have anything to trade for this? It has to be a PSA slab.
Really? It has to be?
I was like, well, your dad told you that, and he's a smart guy, I guess.
Yes, that's the name of the game.
I told her, I was like, I got this BGS 9.5 Pikachu. And she was like,
no, I want that.
Yeah. But it was just hilarious. So Jack, what do you think? Is PSA the king and is here to stay, or do you think other grading companies, do you ever test with other grading companies, or is it just PSA all the way?
I mean, not to go to my grading bias in the past, but I do think PSA is king. I think 2 is BGS for me, and then I don't mind SGC. I mean, I've never graded with them personally. I've been strictly PSA just because, for one, I started there and worked there, had the employee discount, which was awesome. And then what the 10s do with PSA. It's unmatched. So unless you're getting a BGS black label, I think you got to go PSA.
I've yet to hit the black label, but believe me, I've always got my eye on every single card. I'm like, can this black label?
I don't care if it's a base card, whatever it is in that black label looks awesome.
Dude, I got this. I can see if I would ever get. I don't know if you've ever heard of this tool before, the black label metrics.
Oh, the centering tools.
Yeah, the centering tools. Yeah. So every time I get a card, I'm like, what a black label.
Well, you know what the real tool is what Jack shared in the past. It's like this cool little centering device that actually shows you a measurement. This is what the graders have on their desk, right? They get issued this, right, Jack?
Yeah, so that was something we all got when we were there. And you just learn to measure each side, essentially. With that, the measurements, they got to line up. Oftentimes it'll be I forget what the actual unit is, but it'll be 34 on one side and 28 on one side. And that's your threshold for a 10 a lot of times. Oh, wow. So, it's very minute on what you can allow. But, as those numbers get wider apart, that's where you find your 9, your 8, 7, and so on.
Yeah, and I remember you sharing that little tip, sometimes if everything's clean about the card, and I think if it dipped into the 7 centering, that you could get the off-center qualifier and get the 9 or something like that, right?
Like a 9 OC, yep. It's usually when everything else is good and the centering brings it down 2 grades, a minimum of what it could have been if the centering was fine, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah. So one thing a lot of collectors have been talking about in the Pokemon space especially, and Sebastian, I want to hear your thoughts too, is the old cert versus new cert debate. There's a lot of collectors out there right now saying that old certs are worth less because PSA used to be less strict. And there's this like conspiracy that they're, gatekeeping like 10s and stuff. And, so Sebastian, what do you think of that? I want to hear Jack's answer.
I mean, I deal with that all the time here. Like where I'm from the Valley, like every vendor is saying like, oh, the new certs are way better than the old certs because, of course, like how you said, old certs, they were less stricter, and I've noticed and I've seen it like on hand. If you look at a new cert, a 10 will actually 10 no whitening or anything. A 10 back then from an old cert will probably have like a white speck of like a dot or something, or maybe a little bit off centered. Because right now I know that they're very strict. Right now, the centering is like 55-45 on it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And and then they're selling the new certs for way more expensive than the older certs.
Yeah, I've got an example here. This is a PSA 10. That's a very old cert. It's like 5555, right, or whatever. And when I was looking at this card, I immediately noticed this tiny, tiny little white dot right here. Now, it's so tiny that even in today's grade, I think this still could eke out a 10 with the new labels. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that conspiracy? Or do you think PSA started that so people just keep regrading cards and they make more money?
That would be genius, a chess move if anyone did do that there. But honestly, I haven't heard a ton about this, and it's interesting to know. Like, I definitely prefer just newer certs and slabs in general ever since they made that slab change of the actual quality of, the holder. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but they feel awesome compared to what they used to feel like. Also, I think there's just something to be said that, maybe, going years back, some of these certs are legitimately old, and, the grading room might have had a different feel back then. There's certainly a possibility where there's times when you might need to push 10s more than other times. So for it to be now, whatever their grading standards are now, it could be different to where if you guys think it's harder, then maybe there's more value to these 10s now. But tough to say for sure. I mean, I think that's something just a lot of people might speculate on and have their preferences.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that it's like, it could be true for sure that like, I mean, Pokemon's insane. Like, it's probably like 50-60% of like the cards that PSA are grading right now, right?
Yeah.
And so the values are just going crazy. And so back then, estimated PSA value being 200 versus now the same card 2,000 or something, right? Of course, they're going to be a little bit less they're going to be more reluctant to give out the 10 because of the insurance that they have on that slab too, right?
No doubt. And that's just it, is think about the difference in submission levels, right? If you're doing TCG bulk, your max insured value is $200. Well, that card back then, when it was worth $200, you could submit through that, and that would go to any grader in a what would just seem to be a normal order. Now, if you have to submit that same card through Express because it's $2,000 worth of max insured value, well, you're getting a higher tiered grader essentially that's going to take more time and be more careful about grading that card rather than just coming through a regular normal order.
Yeah, I was curious about that, and I want to talk about more of that in the Patreon episode about what your thoughts are on like the tiers and maybe if there's a way to like, I don't want to say game the system, but get a better chance about getting a better grade. So we'll talk about that later. But I am curious about like the tiers of graders inside of PSA, because I heard that like you start basically damn near the mailroom when you work at PSA, like in the research and identification level. Is that true? And then you kind of work your way up to grader, or did you just like walk in like, I know what I'm doing, boom, straight to the grader desk?
It's different, I think, for everybody. When I was there, I know of multiple people that were just straight to graders, and it really came down to what our like test scores were back then, because they had like a grading test. So you go into that, if you kick ass on the grading test, then
right away
sure, you could be a grader. Otherwise, like, I think the grading role is the most sought after role in PSA, like for unless you want to really get into the business side of things. So a lot of people in research, a lot of people in receiving, specs, whatever other roles there are I feel like looking at that role as like, hey, that's something you want to get to. And then, you know, kind of touching on your like ranks of graders after that point, like there is a hierarchy, right? You're not putting a brand new grader on, you know, express orders or, you know, premium orders. That's for sure. You're putting them on the lowest of the bunch, the cheap, you know, $20 slabs, whatever, the junk, right? But you get it through there as they prove themselves through time. And, you know, these cards go through verification that like, if you have a verifier come into the same grader saying, hey, your grades suck on a weekly basis, they're not going to get moved up, right? Eventually you get moved up, you start doing these other orders like value plus, value max, regular, express, whatever. That's something that, you know, they don't just trust everyone with right away. And once you get to it, you know, that's it's a promotion in a sense. So, you know, you work up, you definitely do. And they don't give the high end stuff to just anybody.
Yeah. Interesting. So, would you ever how often was it that you would misgrade something? And what like these verifiers, when they come at you, is it like, are they only talking to you when it's like a huge difference sort of thing or what? Like,
yeah, it's not going to be like a 1 grade difference, because at the end of the day, that's, you know, a lot of it is subjective in the human sense, right? And 1 to 2 grades, 1 grade especially, isn't a huge deal. Now, if it's like, you know, I graded something a 5 that they're like, no, this should have been a 2, or like I graded it a 10 and realistically it should have been a 7. Like if I just missed something, yeah, they're going to come show that. Or if I'm consistently off, let's say in a 100 card order, all my grades are off by 2 or 3 grades, they're going to come be like, hey, we got to work on adjusting your line on how you're addressing this flaw so that you can get more accurate to what our standard needs to be. And those verifiers are huge to keeping and maintaining their standard. Like those guys kick ass. They're great at what they do.
So, but it's already slabbed at that point in the QA step. So would they like regrade it or like,
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So
it's like, remember like that a card that got graded a 10 and then a 5 and then a 7, Josh?
Before the customer even got it back, you mean?
Yeah, it's like that. Exactly. Like I would literally, when he was saying all that, that's what I was thinking about right there.
and see, that's just it, is when it's in QA checks, like oftentimes orders of, let's say 50 cards are going to have, you know, maybe 2 or 3 cards that are going to get sent back and marked to go, you know, regrade, right? And it's not going to go back to the grading room. It's just going to go with whatever grade the verifier gives it in that point, because they are previous graders. So they're going to send that back to, you know, the people in assembly. They're going to reassemble that card with a new grade. And then from there, I think they might check it again, but that's it. It goes to the next step from there.
Being that the slab can, and we'll talk about this more in the Patreon, but given that an empty slab, like that, you know, you can throw a card in and kind of look at, can possibly hide flaws. Mm-hmm. Like how, in certain cases, like let's say, I don't know, the card has a weird bend to it, but once it's in the holder, you can't really tell. Like, how are they kind of like looking at it like this then? And like literally like just if it looks wonky or something?
The way I remember it, they were picking them up, looking at it front and back, and we're done with each card within like seconds.
Wow.
It was quick.
So boom, boom, and on
it takes me a while,
yeah.
like maybe like a minute so I can see. But what I do is like, so you can see if there's any flaws, like in a PSA slab or even CGC. I put it underneath a light, of course, in the darkest room, and I start moving it. That's when I can see if it has to lift a corner, a bend, or anything.
Right. And the biggest thing, like, they're not going to really bat an eye too much at, like, you know, small cards that are getting 10s. Like, you kind of build a rhythm, I think, and this is just how I kind of interpreted it, is like, these guys are going through these cards. If there's a grade that jumps out to them, or a high grade on a really big card, that's where they're really going to take more time. But those kind of, you know, bulk orders, they're flying through them, man. They do a few thousand a day, and it's quick. So, but they have an eye. I mean, they're not holding it like super close to them. They just flip it over and back. They've got their one central light source in the dark room, and they go through it.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes me like regret the path I've chosen, which is high-end cards, because it's tough. Like, hitting good grades. Like I restored a first edition Mewtwo, and I didn't realize, but it had a weird bend to it. And we talked about this last time, but like a natural bend is like, okay, right? Like you were saying, that's fine. But if this card starts to get wonky or whatever, right? Or if it has like just weirdness going on to it, that's where you guys would say, okay, that's a 4 or 5 or whatever you guys dictate, right?
Right. And a lot of that bend stuff too, like this was something that, you see a lot, even in the sports world with like Prism or Topps Chrome, is they'll get those natural bends over time. And that's stuff that flattens out in the holder. If it's going to flatten out in the holder and there's not like a true crease somewhere, then you're typically pretty good on that being taken into account. Like you don't have to worry about it.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah. So I want to, Sebastian, you were talking about like the human factor in grading. Do you want to kick that question off? Like the personal bias?
Yeah. Like what's like, I know, like, of course, every you guys are just eyeballing it, of course, like, with the human eye. It's not like how Tag does it with the computer and all that. But like, of course, looking at it and like, looking at the card, does the grader ever get influenced by the popularity of like which card it is, and like, oh, like it's like how we talked about it earlier, like, oh, it's my favorite card, oh, I'm gonna give this a 10. But of course, like, what's your opinion on that?
I think every grader, at least that is a collector and appreciates cards, if you see your favorite player, your favorite card come through, you're going to show appreciation for it. Now, I don't necessarily think that means you're going to like skew your grade because of it. And that's something where, sure, any grader could be different there. But for me personally, like, I would appreciate the hell out of the card if it was my favorite player, or, just a sweet card, because you'd see them all the time. But it wouldn't change my grade. Like, you'd get orders of, let's say Tom Brady's your favorite guy. If you saw an order of 100 Tom Brady cards, I'm not changing how I'm grading for that. So I would say there's an appreciation, but I would say there shouldn't hopefully be like a skew, or if I like don't like the player, I'm not gonna like dock the grades because of that.
2.
Yeah, right. Because at the end of the day, like the PSA did have a good understanding of like, hey, these are collectors, and like they're not submitting to get a bunch of 9s and 8s and low shit grades, right? You got to give them 10s where you can, even if it's a shitty order, like, and try to help out the collector, because it's just better for the company and better for the collector. So you definitely try to help them out, and you try to go in with that mindset of how can I help. Yeah,
I've never heard of that.
I'm curious because I've heard this conspiracy that if, let's say I have 10 Tom Brady base cards, same set, same everything, it's the same card, and I send all 10 of those in one order. I heard this conspiracy, well, maybe not base card, let's say a numbered card, something a little bit bigger than a base card.
Serialized and everything?
Yeah, let's say, but they're all the same card, that they would try and find things wrong with, like, they'll give you 10s on the good, but they're comparing the ones they just saw before. Do you think there's some truth to that? Like, that because they're seeing the same card, that they're going to find the ones that are better or worse, or is it just they reset every time, you think?
And this is funny because I had a situation similar to this where I'll share on in a second. But, yeah, I think if you have the same exact card back to back and they do have slight shifts, like, sure, you're going to know which one is like the perfect one. And then that could potentially make the line a little bit tighter. And so going to my experience and what I recently did with an order, I had some cards that were pretty shifted, like right, left, and pretty shifted top, bottom. Like, let's just say I had 100 of these cards, right? All the ones that were shifted right, left, I put aside, let's say 40 of them. And then the top, bottom ones I put together, right? And I submitted them in separate orders. So the top, bottom shifted ones, I put all 60 of those in an order and made that look like, okay, this is the standard of like how the top, bottom shift should look. And then the right, left ones, I put all in their own separate order, the 40 of those, and in hopes, right, that the grader might be like, okay, this is like what it should look like. Now, it may work, it may not, but I'm trying to think of tricks outside the box, just like all of us, because I'm, grading. So I almost feel like I'm playing like a mental game with whoever my grader is, right? And I think we're all in the same boat there.
There's so many like superstitions when it comes to grading. Like there's a card shop owner I know. She's like, I always put the one that I want a 10 on the third card, because she says on the third card in the submission that one always hits a 10 for her. So like any card she wants the 10 on, she puts in that spot.
But it's all luck.
No, totally, right? Like,
what would be so cool to research is like making a way to track the data of like, okay, which card tends to 10 the most often? Mm-hmm. Like, is it the first, the second, the third? Like, what's the 10 rate of those first 3 spots, and then like maybe the last 3 spots? Like, that'd be kind of cool.
Absolutely. The problem is you need inside info for that. But if I had to just gut check, like throw something out, I would say it's the very last card. Because the grader is glad he's done with your damn order.
I've give this one a 10.
Hit 10s. I had an Umbreon VMAX at the very last spot, and that was the one card I wanted the 10 on, and sure enough, at 10. And there was some scratches on the back, like tiny scuffs, like very minimal. Like once it's slabbed, sort of thing, can't really notice it too bad.
Yeah.
And you said last time, Jack, like sometimes the grader throws a dog a bone, sort of thing. And I felt like I was like, they threw me the bone on that one. It
totally varies, man. Like I definitely will say I went in with that mentality of like, I want to help out, and like, because I'm a collector too, and I'm actively submitting while I'm there. So like, I don't want to get screwed over by someone who's grading super tight, right? I want to try to be as loose, but to the standard as possible. And that was what I think the graders who excelled had that mindset. So, and that's what I would want as a collector myself, just like anyone else would.
You guys, it's a win-win thing, That's how you get more business.
For sure. And yeah, just like you said, win-win all around for everybody.
Sebastian, you were talking about like big dealers and stuff like that. What was your question about that?
So that question, like, of course, it also talks about big dealers and of course like us collectors. Have you noticed like a big difference like when like GameStop submits? Like, of course, because I know GameStop like has this thing with PSA that they can submit as much as they want, of course, because they have that contract with them. Mm-hmm. Do you see big differences like of them getting better grades than like the normal typical collectors do?
I'm not too sure. I mean, I wasn't there when GameStop was really prevalent. What I will say is like we would often get international orders that would be like, hundreds and hundreds of cards. Now, it was never skewed differently in the sense of like how we're grading it, because oftentimes the way it works in the grading room when I was there, there's a big shelf of trays with boxes of cards of just orders. You don't know what orders they are. You don't know where they originated from. Like you're just going, you're grabbing your tray, you're bringing it to your desk, and you're hoping you've got some fun cards in there. Right?
Oh, so you guys have like a section of each, and they'll just put the cards there, and they'll be like, oh, hey, those are yours.
It's like free range for anyone. Like anyone, like once you finish your tray, anyone goes to the back, grabs more, and just, they're constantly filling in these shelves with just more trays of boxes of cards that are just each their own individual order. Mm-hmm. And then there's also separate shelves where, like, for me, for example, I was the higher end order, so those orders were on a different shelf. You'd go grab those, or like TCG was in a certain spot for those TCG specific guys, like all that kind of stuff. So to answer your question, I don't think it plays a huge difference. I don't think GameStop's getting a boost if I had to just speculate from an outside, because I don't think the graders totally are seeing that, oh, this is a GameStop order.
Right.
There was something I heard that you could tell it was another PSA employee, though, on the paperwork. That would say PSA EMP or something like EMP.
Yeah, that was true. And honestly, probably the GameStop ones might say like GameStop order, but that's where I think like you have to be looking for that in order to, because you're not opening up the papers.
Yeah.
The packing slip that you send with your orders are in like a sealed plastic wrap. Like you have to kind of look for it,
Right. And you're just trying to get through the order. You're not trying to like stiff
because of all
through.
the thousands of orders they have that they got to
If
go
it's
through.
me, I'm like, I don't give a shit. I want to just get this order done, especially if it's a shitty order of cards that I'm not interested in, because that happens. Like, you want to get through those. So,
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay. And just to mention about that, I did try through GameStop because PSA banned me, and so I've been having to come up with some creative ways, which, by the way, I didn't get banned because of like altering cards or anything. Someone just knew the chief of staff at PSA and was like, hey, this guy's doing this. They looked up who owns Pokemaster Center, and they sent a nice letter to me because they just looked at the address.
It was a beautiful, well-written letter.
Yeah, which I have hung up in my restoration room, by the way.
Now.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I want to see that when we're getting off here at some point.
I will show you. Yeah. But anyway, I hit a 9, and the card was a 151 Charizard, and it had one tiny little white dot in the back. Everything about the card was perfect, centered well, everything. And so if I were to say about the GameStop thing, I think graders are just grading the card. I don't think that now the PSA amp thing, I don't know, like in the case you were talking about like a card that a senior grader next to you or whatever, you were like, hey, check this card out. Do you think it has a chance for good crossover? And they're like, yeah, maybe. Like, sometimes randomly, you get a PSA employee's card, but you don't necessarily know who, unless so.
You look for it.
We talked about it last time, Jack. Like, it's like, if you got your own order, how would you know? Oh, you would know because you would see the cards. You'd be like, wait, these are mine. And you have to tell them, right? Like, you have to go back.
For all
I'm 99% sure it doesn't scan on your account because it's linked to you. And like, when the orders would come through, we would grab those boxes off the trays, right? There's a barcode on the boxes. You have to scan them. So we scanned the barcode. And because it did happen to me at one point where I got my own order, I wasn't able to grade it. And I was like, well, it's fine. Like
when they figured that out, like, of course, because you have to scan it with your scanner, and then of course it shows. I'm pretty sure PSA has their own system. It shows all the barcodes that individual scanned, and it shows the order name and everything. So when they found that out and they saw that you got your own order, did they send somebody else to go get your order? Or they just like, just put it to the side.
No, I just gave it away. Yeah, I put it back on the shelf, and that was that. Basically, that was the procedure. Like, and we kind of knew that from the jump. If you get your own order, you can't grade it. Give it away.
Gotcha. Yeah. So like in the case of that 9 that I got in the Charizard, somebody was telling me just keep cracking it and submitting it until you get a 10. Because he's like, I've heard of Pokemon. Well, this is Pokemon's problem is a lot of cards coming out of the pack have one white dot in the corner.
One little white speck.
Because they're shifting in the pack. They're super old cards now too that people are busting open, and the paint just chips. So do you think there's a possibility of that being true? Like sometimes like a grader would just say, or is that not going to happen? I mean, I know we talked about the size of the white dot too mattering, but curious what you think about that, like just cracking over and over until you hit the 10 sort of thing.
I think it's very dependent on your flaw. I have had cards I've cracked that have jumped from 8 to 10, those were my favorite ones. And I only cracked those because I was like, I'm a grader. I know this is not an 8 for one. So there's just certain things, man.
What was the flaw in that card?
Nothing, because it went to 10.
Really?
Well, I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know what they saw. And that's just sometimes the nature of the game that kind of sucks. But the only thing, and this is more sports centered, but the only thing you want to resubmit is stuff that's not numbered. If it's numbered, I wouldn't even waste your time on it because serial numbers are tracked and you see the grading history. The reason I like cracking and resubbing is because it almost comes in there as a new card. They don't know the history of it if it's not numbered, So sure, you can try maybe 9 times out of 10, but if you've got that, corner chip where a little white's showing, odds are you're not getting bumped up from that. If the flaw is there, the flaw is there. Now, if there's like maybe something you can get hidden or, maybe make look a little less bad, sure, that's your best chance. Like edges with like chromium cards, for example, can often be smoothed out with like your fingernail. That's something that you can do, and I've saved countless cards on that, even sometimes corners. But with Pokemon, it's hard because if you do try to do that little nail trick, you're going to chip the edges and show that white. Yeah.
There is one card in specific, or two cards in specific, that it was for one of my first ever clients. So he had a Latios. So it was one from Surging Sparks.
Nice.
It was two Latios. They were both 9s. Or I think it was just one. I can't remember because this was a while back when I was first starting. Like the business. It was a 9. I cracked it. I did notice that there was a tiny speck of white, but it was like the tiniest. So of course, just normally what I did, I just cleaned it off, clean, flattened it, and then after that, I gave it back to him, and he submitted it, and he came back a 10.
And see, I think there's probably cases where it happens, right? If the flaw is small enough and can kind of be hidden in the holder. And, you know, I remember we talked about that last time too. Sometimes flaws will hide in the holder, especially that like bottom edge. You can really hide things on the bottom edge sometimes. Now the corners are tougher. But
I think we were talking about left and right, right? Because it sits
and
tight.
left and right as well.
Because it sits really tight. So you're saying this too down here could maybe eke it out?
I think the bottom edge you have just as equal as a chance. I feel like the top edge is the least.
Because that gap.
Because of that gap, right?
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say sometimes I've noticed those like little edges like on the actual slab can actually like, especially if the card is like moved more to this side, it will hide some stuff. Like let's say with whitening by chance, it will hide some whitening.
Exactly. And whitening is the biggest culprit on Pokemon. You know, it's just any colored card that has colored edges or colored borders, any show of whitening is just a grade killer. And that was something that PSA told us, like, you can't avoid that. Like, don't try to push that. That's one that you kind of really do have to hit.
So,
but it's size dependent though, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, because again, you were talking about the size on this one. Where was it? There's a tiniest of, it's so small, but it's right there. But had that been any bigger, donezo, right? Like,
right. And that's the thing too. I think where, you know, let's say that's a $5,000 card. I think they're less likely to let things go like that. Where, you know, if we're having those small items on like a smaller card, $200, let's say in a 10, I think you're more likely to get those through.
So maybe that's like the whole cracking 9s until 10s. It's if it's a cheap card and you think eventually it'll slide through, but don't even bother on the big ones, because the big ones are going to go to the senior graders anyway, right? And they take more time with cards than the bulk tier.
Yeah. So those are going to go to, I mean, it's all dependent on your service level, right? So if you send a big card through a smaller service level, for one, you're going to get upcharged. So they will eventually figure that out. But two, like the smaller service level stuff does go to other people. So if it's a bigger one, I'd say just be a little more careful, you know, really kind of analyze your flaw before resubbing.
So you're getting upcharged, but does a senior grader, like, okay, let's say I submit a huge card on a bulk order, I sandbag the value. And does the junior grader in that case go like, oh boy, like, and walk over to the senior grader and say like,
I was thinking the same thing too, like getting like a second opinion, basically, right?
Yeah. I'm not too sure, honestly, how it would work when those cards would come through, because I did get moved on pretty early. Trying to think. I feel like there was a few times where we'd see a card, even in my orders, that were like, okay, this isn't high enough value, and we put it in the notes. But like, it's something you'd want to get a second opinion on, and then if you put it in the notes, it is shown for the next steps to like, okay, we got to upcharge this guy type thing.
Gotcha. Okay. And I imagine those verifiers being badasses, they're probably like, whoa, okay, this is a big card.
Yeah.
Like, hang on, and then give it a few more seconds rather than the flip on the cheap ones, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And those verifiers are like the last line of defense, but like we said, they're good at what they do, to where, you know, when they're going to notice that on a bulk order, they're going to really make sure that grade is accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
So there's like this whole meme out there of like, in fact, I've seen a lot of videos recently about PSA graders or graders in general, where they're like, I don't know, they hit some jackpot the night before and they're super happy, or you know, their girlfriend, you know, whatever. Do you think mood affects like grades at all? Like they're just having a bad day and like you're just sandbagging that day? Maybe on a card, let's say you would have gave a 10, you're like 9
or
like,
5.
Or yeah. Like, do you think that happens? Or?
There's that. It's funny that you say that because I got this card right here, and I'm probably going to show you this one on the Patreon because this one got a 5.
Really?
And I'll explain why it got a 5 and why I think it got a 5.
Okay. Yeah. And Jack can take a look at it too.
Yeah. But, So to answer your question, I mean, from a professionalism standpoint, that shouldn't happen, right? If you're a good professional worker, I feel like you should go on there and whatever the hell happened last night with your girlfriend or didn't happen, you know, shouldn't be dictating your grades. But, you know, I think there's maybe a case to say, like, if you're in a good mood, maybe you're trying to push 10s more. I think that's more likely than if you're in a bad mood saying, screw this guy's order, I'm going to give him all 9s on perfect cards just to piss him off. Like, I never had that happen. But that's, you know, everybody's different. So you really can't speak on that. But I hear that all the time, and it's hilarious.
One last question: have you ever heard of anybody getting bribed, or like there was like a little $20 bill in the little order, like, "Hey, lunch is on me, big dog. Don't worry about it."
That's funny, Sebastian. One of my very first videos I ever posted was like me putting like a bunch of drugs into a PSA order with like a stack of cash. I was like, first you submit your order and then you bribe.
Then you bribe.
I mean, it wouldn't even make it to those trays. So
that's what I was gonna say. Is like all you're doing is bribing the people in packaging who don't give a shit about the graders.
Wow, $20. Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're probably not making shit either, so they're gonna be happy about that $20 tip. But you know, I've never heard of anything bribery wise, because it's like, even if you tried, like, you don't know where your order's going. Mm-hmm. You don't know which grader, even from an employee standpoint. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't know which employee was getting my order. So, you know, that's one that I think they've taken the steps to like kind of cover that ground, which is good, because I'm sure there would be a lot of it if they didn't take those steps.
Absolutely. Yeah. It could be a huge problem.
I mean, I would throw $100 bill in my order if it meant, you know,
10s on all of them.
Bump my grade.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I want to show you some cards in the Patreon here of like, because as you said, Pokemon with Whitening is like the biggest culprit. Last we talked about like how many dots like would push it from an 8 to a 9, and I got kind of like lost in the later parts, like once it starts pushing into the 7 and 6 and 5. So I'm going to show you some pictures in the Patreon episode where we're going to pull up some examples, and I want you to kind of walk us through like how much whitening does it take to get to certain grades, because I'm still not 100% clear about that.
Yeah.
And then I guess my last question for the public up here is basically about like the whole encodes and altered authentic slabs versus not holdering it. I'm curious because it seems, I don't know. I just to be honest, haven't looked at it enough to know like, okay, colored cards, whatever, we'll slab it, but we'll put authentic altered and we won't give it a grade. But maybe press they don't, because of possible layer separation. In fact, we've seen issues recently where people have humidified cards, not dried them properly, and there's like condensation building in the PSA slab, and like the layers are literally separating inside the slab. Yeah. And so I think that's, if anything, PSA is probably getting more strict on like trying to detect, you know, humidification, pressing, and even now with the heat tactics like the heat pen, things like that. I guess I'm just curious because, for example, I used the heat pen on something. It wasn't with PSA, it was with BGS, but they slabbed it, right? But there was another card that had some lifted, like the plastic on the front of the hollow was like peeling up. And I just laid that back down, pressed it, and the natural adhesive kind of just stuck back together and everything was cool. I sent it off. What I did notice is where it was peeling up, there was a line of where it was peeling up. So you could kind of see that crease of where it was folded at one point. BGS sent it back, not slab this time. They just said, do not hold her. It was just in a card saver, and they still charged me the $150. Again, that's BGS, but so I guess does that track a little bit? Like maybe if there was like some adhesive funny business or peeling, that those are the ones that maybe they wouldn't slab versus like colored cards. I'm just curious, what have you seen get slab versus not?
Yeah. Well, first I'll hit colored. So like anything that's recolored is like an absolutely no, they're not going to slab it.
Okay.
If they see that it's been recolored, like if you get a recolored card in a slab, you probably got lucky, is what I would say. And they actually want those cards back to like get them out of slabs if you run across them. And I think I feel like I've heard somewhere that they'll like, if you find a fake card or something in one of their slabs and like turn it in, I think there's something like reward wise. Anyways.
After hearing this, people are going to be looking for all kinds of slabs.
I know. And don't quote me on that. I could totally be off. Maybe I dreamt it. Who knows?
It's allegedly.
But, yeah, alleged. So do your fact checking on that. When it comes to, alterations, I mean, if it's coming up too short, if it looks trimmed, that kind of stuff, odds are it's not getting slabbed either. If it's a true alteration that seems done by the collector to like, get by and do some funny business, it's probably not getting slabbed. Now there's cases where I think pressing, due to kind of the screw-on cases that we had talked about, that's something that if it's a screw-on case press that doesn't seem like the collector did it, it'll probably lose some grading points. But if it's someone actually pressing the corners and leaving that shine look, then yeah, that's going N5, altered, no grade. So, and then if I miss anything there too, please let me know. But
I'm curious about like trimmed cards. Now, here at Cardboard Alchemist, we never condone painting or trimming cards. However, I'm curious because my dad sent a Jeter recently, and he actually bought. I remember when I was like probably 3 or 4 years old in Hawaii. Like I used to live in card shops. My dad used to buy a bunch of sports cards. It was cool. We had these things called bidding boards. This was before eBay. There was a wall of just like tickets and what card is being bid on that week. And you would literally go up, write the number you're willing to pay and your initial, and you would come back that Saturday. If nobody outbid you by writing the whatever, then you won the card. So he bought a bunch of those rookie Jeters, the famous one. By the way, never has gotten anything over an 8.5. And he has like, these are flawless cards. It's crazy how strict they are on those. But one of them got kicked back for not trimmed, but like factory, like not big enough, or what is it called? Like, too small. That's what it is. N6, right? Mm-hmm. So how often did you kind of see that stuff? Because I mean, how did they even measure? Did you have like a template on your table, or like in the order there was like pre-scans and they determined it wasn't big enough?
No, we had a mini ruler that there was the exact dimensions of what a card should measure. And we would look, I wonder if I have it still next to me, because then I would know what the dimensions are.
But it would be dependent on the like, it's super dependent, right? Like on the set, like would there be like tools that PSA has that you would go and like look at that set and see what they measure in that set then?
With a lot of sports cards, it was pretty standard and common, like that they all had the same measurement. When it comes to like those kind of obscure ones, that was a tricky part of grading, to where I often found myself asking, some of the top graders in the room, hey, does this usually run small? Because usually if it's, one of those one-offs or whatever, they have multiple of those cards in that set in your order. And then okay, you can kind of gauge they're all coming up short, let's say. But if it's just one random card in an order of cards that are normally sized that runs small, that's something I'd go run by another grader and be like, hey, what's the deal? Are these small? Or does this look too small? So it ranges, and that's where, depending on the leadership in the grading room was super important. I think, they really, really encourage asking questions. It wanted to make it as open door as possible. No matter who it was, if you had a question, go in there, ask it, because two opinions and two sets of eyes is better than just the one, right? Mm-hmm. So, and that was something that I definitely appreciated there, because, especially being when you first walk into that room, it seems a little antisocial and quiet, but you get to know these people, you get to ask them different questions about the cards, and, you build a little bit of camaraderie that way. So, and consistency, more importantly.
Damn it, PSA, start paying your graders more, because that's the number one thing I hear is it was the best job ever. It's just they didn't pay good enough, I heard the overtime's crazy. They had mandatory overtime. Is that true?
Not for grading. And that's, I think I saw that on a different video. Yeah. That's for the other departments. Grading, you were encouraged to do overtime if you wanted to, but it was never mandatory while I was there.
Encouraging? Shit, I'd stay.
I mean, paid time and a half, I was happy to do it. So, and I didn't think our wages were terrible. I'm not going to lie. I was happy with it, but, it I don't know what it is now. So maybe that's something to consider too.
Yeah, I mean, with the amount of money PSA is just they can't get wheelbarrows big enough underneath the spouts of money pouring right now. So, I mean, I hope they continue. I mean, like I said, between all the graded companies, even though I'm a little salty over them banning me, and I actually had an email exchange back and forth with her, and I was like, listen, I don't condone certain things, and people are doing this stuff, and if anything, it's best that you're informed about what's going on. Yeah. But they didn't want to hear it. They were like, is this your website? Yeah. I was like with all these tools, I was like, yeah. I didn't even reply to the email.
You gotta deny.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But hey, you know what? Yeah, I get it. They want to be and all these companies want to come off super we're being strict and stuff, but things eke by. I mean, especially when you're doing that amount of cards and stuff like that. So if anything, I hope the technology does increase to detect things like recoloring, because I have heard of people, especially in Pokemon, fixing one tiny white dot, right? Which is your most common thing that holds back nines, because you can buy nines all day long with that problem, crack them. And if you have a method to fix that, I think it's a cheat code, and I don't like it. If I were to go buy a 10 and I found out somebody colored it, I'd be pretty pissed off.
Oh, for sure.
So hopefully they can come up with some sort of in that research phase, scanning it to kind of because tag and stuff do their report. Have you ever seen the tag reports of how they do the scans?
I haven't. Honestly, I haven't dabbled too much into tag at all, to be honest.
It's pretty nuts. They have this 3D scan sort of thing going on in the back. It even shows you if there's an indent or some weird stuff going on. But now that I say that, by the way, the card that got kicked back for rebacked at BGS got slabbed at tag, no problem. So maybe their stuff isn't that straight. But anyway, that ends the public episode. We're going to jump into the Patreon and ask some really cool questions. So if you're not in the Patreon, jump in there. By the way, use the desktop to sign up. If you use your iPhone, Apple will charge you more.
You an extra.
Yeah, because of their stupid subscription things. So save yourself some money. Go to cardboardalchemist.com and sign up on desktop. That way it renews there and not on Apple stuff. So thank you, Jack. Let's go hop into the Patreon here. And I'm going to show you that my little band letter too. Yeah.
If you guys want to see the letter, hop on the page.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
like my